Hi, welcome back to Jordbaer Knits knitting channel. My name is Jordan, and it's been a little bit since I recorded a video. I feel like I start everyone like that, but I had actually recorded something back in December when I had actually gone home for the holidays, and I was getting over a cold, and I thought that I was good enough to do the video, but all of the talking that I was doing made me cough so frequently, and it was an absolute nightmare to edit. I also didn't have my personal laptop with me, and I was editing it on my phone in iMovie, and that was also not ideal. So I figured I'm just gonna redo the video now, especially because I've done kind of a lot in the month and a half or so since I had recorded that video, so I figured it would just be fun to talk about everything. So this might be a long video, but that's okay. I'll start with I guess the older finished object, and it's inside out because I was wearing it. But no, you can see the wrinkles from in it, but that's okay. This is the Mountains and Seas sweater. This was a test knit that I did for Sarah's Handmakes, Sarah's Handmakes here on YouTube. I really like this sweater. It is a V-neck, as you can see, a V-neck raglan with 2x2 ribbing details in the collar and the cuffs. And it's also got a nice split hem, which I really liked. I'll put some pictures, probably over here maybe, of me wearing it. I knit the size extra small, which according to the pattern as it's originally written, I probably would have been a size small, but it's a relatively oversized garment. Like, I think there are maybe like 9 inches of positive ease normally. So even the extra small, I believe I was still going to be getting about 4 inches, which is why I ended up just doing that, just to get something not tight fitting, but just not quite as oversized. And I am really pleased with how it came out. I do think the oversized one, like the actual size small, would be really cute. And I'm like thinking about maybe doing one in the future, possibly. I don't know. But I do really like the extra small. And I think having that flexibility is a really cool option because, there's a lot of oversized patterns right now. And if you didn't necessarily want something as oversized, especially for like a V-neck raglan, I think being able to go down the size below without like totally getting rid of positive ease is really great, and it just makes it more flexible. So I said I really like the sweater, and I do. I really love the pattern. Like the V-neck, the 2x2 ribbing with it just looks so good. It's so what was the word I was gonna say? I guess chunky. I don't know. It feels. I love how it feels because it's double folded. And I really like the split hem. I think it's just really cute and flattering, and it's a little hard to tell how I'm holding it. Oh, you can kind of see there. The back ribbing is about 1 inch longer than the front ribbing, which I think is just a nice little touch as well. I am not pleased with the yarn that I selected for this, which is really unfortunate because I think I would be wearing this even more if I had chosen different yarn. Previous times that I had talked about this pattern, I mentioned some of the issues that I had with the yarn and in selecting what yarn I wanted to use for this. It is a 20 stitch gauge, and so it's like a DK weight. And in the pattern, Sarah writes that you could either hold 1 strand of DK or fingering and mohair, or like a fingering and alpaca held together to get to hopefully get the DK. But if you wanted something fuzzy, I didn't really want to do that for this sweater. I wanted just kind of like a 1 strand of wool look. And so I decided to try a new yarn, Blue Sky Fibers Woolstok worsted, which I believe is just 100% Peruvian Highland wool. Yeah, I don't have the band anymore, I don't think. But yeah, I think it's Peruvian wool. And I was not able to meet gauge just holding it single-stranded. I thought that I was going to be able to. I couldn't. I really would have had to stretch it, and I didn't like how my stitches were looking. Like the tension just wasn't very good. And so I went back and I ended up getting a very thin, I believe it was merino lace weight yarn to hold with it. So again, no mohair. I didn't want that, but I was hoping that the little bit of extra yarn would just help fill it out a little more so that I could get closer to gauge. Like I think I was maybe 2 to 3 stitches off. And considering that I was already making a size smaller than what my originally sort of written size would have been, I was very cognizant that my tight gauge might kind of make the sweater too tight and too small and not wearable. So I really wanted it to fit properly. And I really, really wanted to hit gauge since this was a test knit. You know, if I was just knitting this on my own, whatever, I still would have cared, but I would have been maybe a tiny bit less stressed about it, but I really wanted to get as close to 20 stitches as possible. So I do think it helped a little bit in terms of getting gauge. I believe I'm about 21 stitches now post blocking, so not quite the 20, but a lot closer. And I mean, I'm still pretty much getting the fit that I anticipated getting with this size extra small, so that's good. But the yarn, and I think it's specifically the Woolstok, is pilling so bad already. I have not depilled it because I wanted to show everyone, but I mean, you can see, like that is not good. I don't know if you can see it there too. I don't know, it's just frustrating, because I've worn it a decent amount, but really not that much for how much pilling there is, you know? And even, I was gonna say that I could notice where I joined a new ball of yarn because I was trying to do the spit splice method. Maybe it was back here. I was gonna say, oh, I could see it, but then I was having trouble finding it. But I think somewhere here, like, I don't know. I'm just not happy with how this yarn is holding up. Even in places where I didn't change the yarn, there's just these little bumps and things, like here, I don't know if you can see, where I'm really not pleased with how it looks. And it also really makes me question how long this will hold up given how much it's pilled already. I will probably use my depiller on it soon, and hopefully once those initial pills are taken off, maybe it won't be as bad. I've heard that can happen with some other yarns, like, I mean, cashmere. I don't know if just like a Peruvian Highland wool, if it's the case for that, but we'll see. We'll see how it holds up. To just go over some other things about the pattern though, like I mentioned, it is a raglan. So you start by casting on and you are working sort of back and forth to shape the raglan. So kind of making, I don't know, the front I guess kind of like of the shoulder. You don't join in the round immediately, especially since you're doing the V-neck. You're also doing increases to help shape the neckline while you're doing the raglan at the same time. And that also gives it a nice fit around the shoulders and the neck without putting short rows in. And I think it looks really great. It sits really well. I might have said this before, but I really like the size of the raglan. It's a 3-stitch raglan, and I think it is just a really nice width. I don't like super thick raglans, and I also don't like where it would only be 1 stitch. So I think 2 or 3 stitches is like the sweet spot, and I think this 3-stitch one looks really nice here. The sort of biggest modification that I did for this, which I did ask Sarah about doing before I did so, was related to the decreases on the sleeves. So let me see if I can get this for you. It's probably hard to tell with all the pilling, but the decreases are done using a center double decrease. I think that's what the stitch is. CDD is how it's abbreviated in patterns. It's the same type of decrease that you use for the center stitch of the raglan when you're decreasing. And as it was written in the pattern, the sleeves are relatively tight fitting compared to how much positive ease is in the chest portion of the sweater. And I hadn't noticed it or initially when I was looking at the pattern, and then some of the other testers had mentioned it when we were all sort of starting to get to the arm and the sleeves. And I wasn't sure if I liked that look for myself, and so I asked Sarah if it would be okay to totally omit the sleeve decreases, and she said yes, which was cool. So I knit pretty much a whole sleeve, like down into the ribbing, with no decreases. And then I was looking at it and thinking, you know what, this actually looks too wide now, because I didn't necessarily want a bell sleeve for this, especially because that's not the look of the original sweater. I didn't want to totally change what the sleeves looked like. And so I ripped it back and I sort of just did my own decrease rate for it. I wrote it in my notes on Ravelry, so if you're interested in knitting this pattern and specifically doing a different sort of arm or sleeve decrease rate, you can check out what I did. I think you could apply it even if you're doing other sizes. So I'm gonna get my Ravelry on my laptop real quick. Okay, so I ended up knitting straight for about 3 inches, and then I did a decrease round. Another 3 inches, decrease round. 2.5 inches, decrease. 1.5 inches, decrease. Sorry. And then I did 11 rounds, which is probably close to 1.5 inches just of straight stockinette before switching to the ribbing. And I followed the size of the cuffs on the sleeves as the pattern states. So it's about 4 inches, and I think it looks amazing. I love this size, especially with the 2x2 rib. I think it just looks so nice. But yeah, so I ended up not really doing that many decreases. And I will say the sleeve, I think the sleeve fits really nicely. There's a little bit of space without being too slouchy, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I'm glad that I ended up doing that. And I think that's like pretty much the only major modification I did. This isn't necessarily a modification, but, and I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, I did change, well, for picking up the stitches for the collar, There is not a specific number given in the pattern. Sarah writes to pick up, I believe it's 2 out of every 3 stitches. And then you want to make sure that you have a multiple of 4 plus 1 sort of on each side of the collar, and then 1 stitch in the middle for the center decrease. And I had a lot of trouble at first picking up what would be a correct number of stitches for myself. And what I sort of settled on was, let me double check, 77 on each side. So I guess in total 78. Yeah. But so 77 on one side of the V, 77 on the other. Oh, and a note about needles. This, actually, okay. With this being a 20 stitch gauge using DK weight, she recommends using 4mm needles. I sort of instinctively went up to 4.5 since I knit tightly, and I did that for the body. Originally in the pattern, she has written to not change any needles when you are doing the collar, and for myself, I thought that would look a little messy, so I did go down needle size to 4. But for the, I think for the sleeves and for the body ribbing, I did stay at 4.5. For the body, let me see. Okay, I didn't specifically note it in Ravelry, but I know for the body, I definitely did 4.5. Cuffs, maybe 4. But so that's just something to keep in mind. I think that the bottom ribbing still looks neat. Like I like how it looks still. I think it looks good. I don't know why I was nervous about doing the collar. I guess it's something you could play around with. Depending on your knitting gauge, you might be able to just keep the same needle. But yeah, I think that's it. Otherwise, the pattern is out now, which is awesome. So if you were looking for a V-neck raglan, you like the 2x2 ribbing look, and you want to support a new and upcoming designer, fellow YouTuber, definitely check this one out. I'll link to it on Ravelry. Yeah, so that's the Mountains and Seas sweater. Okay, so my next finished object, I'm so excited about. It has not made an appearance on this channel in 6 months at least, maybe longer. I can't remember when I put it aside. So I'm very excited to show you guys now. If I can set my laptop down. This is the Jeju sweater. I love it so much. This has been, I think, my longest project to date, partly because I did put it down for a majority of 2024, and yeah, I just only recently sort of picked it back up to finish it. I was so close. Basically, I had done the majority of the body, and then I don't know what I was thinking when I originally bought the yarn, but I did not buy enough. And not buying enough yarn originally, combined with the fact that it was then getting a little bit warmer here when I was working on it, made me just put it aside for a little bit. So it was in hibernation, and just seeing it sitting there, I really, really wanted to finish it, especially towards the end of 2024 when I'd finished the Mountains and Seas sweater, and then I was working on a few gift knits. I really just wanted another sweater for myself, and so I was determined to finish this one. So I will go over all of the details about this since I haven't spoken about it in a while, but like I said, this is the Jeju sweater. It's by Aegyo Knit, and I knit the size 2, I believe, either 2 or 3. It'll be in my Ravelry notes. I used Juniper Moon Farm Herriot, which is a 100% alpaca. I don't know if it's baby. No, it's just 100% alpaca, but it's an absolute dream. It's so soft. I enjoyed working with it a lot. It did sort of get that thing that happens a lot with mohair as well, that when you're knitting, all of the fluff kind of forms a little ring around the yarn, so you kind of have to like snip it off or just like keep moving it down. But I think with fuzzy yarn, that's just like a byproduct. The main color I used was Mocha, even though in my opinion, and even on camera, I think it looks just like a really nice gray, like a dark gray. It's got some sort of natural heathering, which I think is really beautiful. And maybe you could call it like a warmer toned gray. I don't know. But anyway, it's Mocha. And then the cream accent is Talc. So this was, I think this was the first major stranded color work project that I did. I had previously knit some little just like color work ornaments, but I'm pretty happy actually with all of my floats. I think I did a really great job for my first my first project. I did not catch floats anywhere. I think sort of the biggest color block was like 5 stitches or something. So either 5 or 6. So I thought that was fine. I just was trying to be very mindful about not making it too tight in those sections. And so I think it turned out great. So if you also do this project, chances are you don't need to catch floats either, which is nice. And it is a drop shoulder sweater. It's interesting. I had never, at this point in time, I started this back in January of 2024. At this point, I had not ever done a sweater that was shaped using increases like this. I'm holding it up. You probably can't tell that much, but that is sort of the back shoulder seam. And instead of doing short rows, you create the nice shaping through just making increases on either side. And initially when I was picking up the stitches for it, I was worried that there were going to be a lot of holes sort of left in the shoulder area from that technique, but it looks very seamless, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. So I thought that was a nice little technique. I know it's not like a super novel technique or anything. I just hadn't done it before. So talking about split hem, this one also has a split hem, which I love. That was one of the things that drew me to it. And this sweater actually does have more of the bell sleeve look. So there are no decreases in this sleeve. And I had picked this sweater back up to work on here and there when I was also working on the Mountains and Seas sweater. So knowing what the sleeves were going to look like on this sweater sort of confirmed to me that I did need to put some decreases in the Mountains and Seas because I didn't want the same silhouette as what this one had. But yeah, I mean, I think it works really well in this sweater because it's not super oversized, but it's a relatively oversized sweater as well. And so I think the sleeves complement sort of the main body part. And especially since I chose alpaca, I mean, like you can see when I hold it, it's got such a beautiful drape. And I feel like the sleeves just look so fun with it. For needles, this one called for 4mm needles for the body, 3mm for the collar and the hem and all the ribbing, and then for the color work, 4.5mm. It also has a 21 stitch gauge, and I think earlier last year when I had started knitting it, I think I did swatch and I was able to get gauge using those needle sizes. I have not measured since blocking it, but I think I was relatively close to gauge on this one, so that's good. I thought the needle sizes worked out well. I saw some other comments on other people's projects on Ravelry that they thought the 3 was slightly too tight, especially for the collar, and so they did 3.5, but I think the 3 looks really nice and clean. Get a little close up. So it was very tedious because it is a half twisted rib, and on the right side you are doing 1 twisted knit stitch and 2 purls. And so for the ribbing at the bottom, it was a lot. It was a lot, especially the back. I think the back has maybe 4.5 or 5 inches of ribbing. Doing all those twists on 3 millimeters, but it looks really good. Like, I definitely am happy that I did that and that I didn't change it or anything, because I think it looks really clean, and I love how the knit stitches pop on that on the right side that you see. So the biggest thing that I changed with this was the collar. So as you can see, I've got more of like a funnel neck or a mock neck sort of look. Originally, let me see if I can do this. Originally, this pattern calls for it to be double folded. I'm doing a poor job of holding this up to show you, but you can look up a picture if you want. And I think I knit the collar 4 times at least, and I, for the life of me, could not get the collar to be wide enough so that I could get it over my head when I was knitting it double folded. I think it looks really nice with the double folded, so you get more of a crew neck. And initially I was really set on doing that, but it got to a point where I was just so frustrated with having to knit this collar, to do that half twisted rib on 3 millimeter needles over and over and over, that I just decided to keep it as a funnel neck. So you knit for about 4 inches worth of the ribbing, and then you would, if you're doing the fold over, you fold it, and then you've got about 2 inches of rib, which looks cute. Or keeping it like this gives you a nice little mock neck. So it comes up, and I'm sure I've also put pictures up of myself wearing it, but it comes up to about here on my neck, which I think is a really nice length. It's not too close where it's, brushing against my chin, but it does provide some nice warmth on my neck, which is good. I don't remember how many stitches I ended up picking up. It was, I think, more than what is written in the pattern. I know at least whatever she recommends the rate of pickup to be, I think that is wrong. I think it may have been 2 out of 3 as well, or 3 out of 4. And I think you should be picking up every stitch, actually. And honestly, maybe doing it on the 3.5 would have been better. It wouldn't have been quite as tight, but I just figured I was gonna keep going with the 3 millimeter. But yeah, I really like how it looks now. Once I sort of was like, you know what, we're just gonna keep it as the funnel neck. And I tried it on, and I really loved how it looked, actually. And I don't have any other hand knit sweaters that have that sort of neckline, so I feel like it was meant to be anyway. For the binding, or the bind off, I initially just bound off in pattern, and I know that is not super stretchy, but I thought it would be fine, and it was not. It still made it too tight, which was so frustrating. So I ended up doing the surprisingly stretchy bind off, and quite stretchy, and it goes over my head very comfortably. So that is something to think about if you are doing this sweater and the collar, and whether you're planning on sewing it down or keeping it the funnel neck. I would err on the side of looser and stretchier if possible, just because I think this ribbing just makes it so tight. For the sleeves, I did just a regular bind off. So I just bound off in pattern basically. And you can see this one is not stretchy, but the sleeve is so wide anyway that it doesn't bother me at all. Like there's more than enough room for my arm and hand. And for the ribbing at the bottom as well, I just bound off in pattern. And again, this also doesn't need to be stretchy, so it's not a big deal. I think if you didn't have the side split, you might want to have done the surprisingly stretchy bind off, but since you've got the split hem, it doesn't really make a difference. But yeah, otherwise, I absolutely love this sweater. I think the Argyle pattern is so cool. It's very different from anything else I've seen. And I love how graphic it is. I love also the placement of it. I feel like it sits across my body at a really nice place where it's not like too high up where it just covers the chest area and looks kind of weird, like you're wearing like, not a bra obviously, but yeah, it's not too high up, but it also is not so close down to your hips where it looks weird with the ribbing. I don't know. I feel like the proportions look very good. Oh, that said, I believe I just knit the length to pattern. I don't think I did anything different with that. I did the sleeves to pattern. I did pretty much everything except for the collar according to the pattern. So yeah, do with that what you will. But yeah, I definitely recommend it though. I think it's really nice. So yeah, there's the Jeju sweater. Okay, so in 2024, I mentioned I did some gift knits. I don't have those anymore since I gifted them to the respective recipients. So I'll just touch very briefly on them. For my uncle for Christmas, I knit did I do an Oslo hat? Oh my gosh. Oh, no, I did the weekend hat. I was watching some other knitting podcasts and someone mentioned an Oslo hat, and so I think I had that in my head. I did the weekend hat by PetiteKnit, which is a 1x1 ribbed beanie, and I used Berroco Vintage, which is a nice acrylic wool blend of yarn. I wanted to do that because I thought it would be a little softer and more tolerable to wear on the head, as opposed to just doing some Peruvian wool from the wool of the Andes worsted from Knit Picks. I have some random balls of it in my stash that I had wanted to use initially, but I really ended up liking the Berroco Vintage. I had bought 2 skeins of it, and it comes in 100 grams for 218 yards. And I ended up using like 110 grams. So I had to break into the second ball just right at the very end, which was annoying. So I think if you were doing a smaller size, you could probably get away with just using 1 ball, which is good. I did the large size and I knit it on 4mm needles. I think originally the pattern calls for 3.5, but I think it might also call for like a DK weight yarn. I'm not sure, but since I was using worsted, I just went up a needle size. And I also modified the brim length. So instead of having a 4-inch brim, it only has a 3-inch. But yeah, I think it went well. My uncle has not said how it fits, so I hope it fits okay. It looked really nice though, and my other family members also want one now, so I might be making some more in the future, which I'm not mad about. I think I could probably get another hat for my cousin out of the remaining skein or ball of the Berroco vintage. I told her, you know, there might only be one fold of the brim, and she's like, that's fine. So I might do that, which would be cool. I also knit a scarf for my grandmother. I don't think I even took a picture of the finished. Oh, actually, I think I have some pictures of the end of the scarf. May or may not be helpful. But I used a really beautiful hand-dyed yarn by a local Austin hand dyer. Her name is Erin. Her company is Yarn Matter, and she uses all natural dye for her yarns, which is really cool. And so I bought one skein of, I believe it's like a sock yarn. So what is it? Like 50 grams for 430 yards or something like that. So I pretty much was like, I'm just going to use this whole skein to do the scarf. I ended up picking the Kilometre Scarf by Handmade by Florence. That scarf is originally written to be at a much thicker gauge, but I was like, we're gonna use the pattern. It's a free pattern, which is awesome. We're gonna use the pattern and adapt it for this scarf for my grandma. And it starts with the Turkish cast on, which was really cool. So I guess you're kind of knitting in the round. You're creating like a flat scarf, but it's like double thickness. So I don't know if double knit is technically the technique that you're doing, but I was knitting in the round after doing the Turkish cast on, which was cool. I definitely recommend trying the scarf pattern to just try out the Turkish cast on, because it was easier than I expected. Like once I sort of wrapped my mind around what I was doing, it was really easy, and it produced a really clean looking edge, and I was very pleased with it. And so you just basically knit a huge long tube, and I just knit until I ran out of yarn basically. And you finish it with Kitchener stitch. So you just close it back up, and then it's a really clean little line at the other end as well. So that worked out really well, I think. I'll try to put some pictures up if I haven't already, but I was mostly pleased with it. I wished that it was a little longer. I think because I was kind of making it 2 layers, it didn't end up being as long as I had expected, which if you lived somewhere cold, it probably would not be sufficient. Or, I mean, it would just be for not freezing days. But since my grandmother lives in Florida, I'm like, it's fine. This will be perfect. This is good enough for her. And I think she really liked it. So that's what really matters. Oh, and then I sort of just recently, like after the holiday season had ended, I wanted to make my aunt a little scarf as well. So I knit her a scarf number 4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I used Cascade 220 fingering Superwash, and I think the color was Iguana. It was left over from when I did the melange sweater for my friend, where I used purple and green. I thought the green would look really nice on her, especially because she's got like blonde hair, and the shade of green is so beautiful. It's like almost olivey. And yeah, I don't know how much there is to say about that scarf. I would say more if I had it here with me in person, but I used 3.5 millimeter needles for that, which is what the pattern calls for. I believe actually I did 1 or 2 sort of extra pattern repeats, because the scarf is, you sort of alternate doing little bands of garter stitch and then 1x1 ribbing. And I wanted to use up more of the skein, and so I did a few more extra repeats of the garter and rib, and I still have yarn left over, but that's okay. I'll find another project to use it in. But yeah, I hope they are enjoying those. It definitely is still cold where they live, so they should be able to use the hat and the scarf for a while longer still. So I think I have one more finished object for myself. So I'll talk about that now. And that is the Escher beanie. Let me see, there we go. The Escher beanie by Rose Knitwear. And I am so happy with this. I have been admiring the Rose Knitwear patterns online for a while and just never got one yet to knit. But when her book came out, I knew I kind of wanted it. And so my boyfriend's family had asked, you know, like, what should we get Jordan for the holidays? And so I told him to send that link for the book to them. So they got me the book, which is very nice, and I'm so happy. So I knit the hat out of it. I have some other plans for some other projects, and I don't necessarily have the yarn for some of the sweater projects in that book right now, but I do definitely want to do more projects from it at some point, like the upstream sweater. Oh, I love it so much. But I really wanted to knit something from it, especially while I was waiting for some other yarn for another project. So I figured I would do a hat because I have some just like store-bought beanies, but I wanted a knit hat for myself. And I love this. It's so cool. So what yarn did I use? I used some leftover Drops Lima. The black is Drops Lima. And then the cream is Woolfolk 4. Initially when I cast this on, I had actually tried to use leftover Woolstok, the Blue Sky Fibers Woolstok, because I don't want it to go to waste, you know. And so I figured I'm gonna hold it, you know, I'm holding it with another yarn. It should work out. And I was not liking how it was looking. Originally I had been doing the small size, or like the first size, because I don't have a huge head. And I think I'm trying to remember what size needles I was knitting it on. 5, I think, which is what the pattern calls for. And it was looking too tight, like is usual for me. But even when I was stretching it out, I probably could have stretched it, but it probably would have been tight on my head, and the stretching I feel like it would have made the fabric too holey, which defeats the purpose of wearing a hat. And so I decided not to use the Woolstok, and I remembered that I had this one skein of the Woolfolk Far. Initially, when I was casting on the Jeju sweater, the yarn store that I went to, I think, didn't have the talc color in store, like the cream, and someone there helped me find what hopefully could have been a good replacement for it. And they suggested the Far, so I got that. And it didn't end up working in that project because that's a chainette yarn, and it's wool. And it looked too different from the alpaca. So I've just kind of had this one skein sitting in my stash for a while. And I actually had started just kind of freehanding a little skinny scarf last year. And I just was getting bored with it and had put it down for a while. And I figured it would be a better use to put it in this hat than to have just like a random little scarf that I didn't even know how long it was going to be. Like I probably would have needed to buy more of it to make the scarf a proper length. And I'm really happy that I ended up putting it in this, because I think since it's a chainette yarn, even though I want to say, I feel like Ravelry lists it. Okay, they do list it as a worsted, but it's 50 grams for 142 yards. So, I mean, some could argue that that would even be closer to a DK. I don't know. But I think because of the construction, it just feels so plump and squishy. And I feel like it helped fill out this fabric because the drops Lima also is like on the border between worsted and DK. I mean, it lists it as DK on Ravelry, and it's 50 grams for 109 yards. Now, the Lima is a mix of wool and alpaca, but I think together they just worked really well. And so what I did instead, because I was worried that the 5mm needles just wasn't going to work for me, and so I went down to a 4.5, but I was doing the second or larger size, and I think it worked well. I don't want to put it on right now because it'll mess my bangs up, but I will put a picture in to show what it looks like on. But it stretches out really nicely. I've been kind of fiddling with the brim as I'm sitting here, because I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. It's so crazy. You start with the brim. Look, and you can see my little mistake there. But you're knitting, it's like rib stitch. It's like ribbing with some slip stitches to get this cool like striping effect in the purl side, and these very distinct lines, vertical lines of the black and the cream knits. And so you do that for, I believe it's 4 inches, and then you just turn it and start working the other way around to do the remainder part of the hat. And then you get this crazy, it reminds me of TV static because of the colors I did. But so that's on the inside. And then of course, when you flip the brim up, you don't see it. Now, initially when I was knitting it, I thought, oh, it'll look kind of weird down here at the bottom where it's folded, but in practice, I don't end up wearing the brim that high or that much folded. I usually end up doing it around this much, so probably between 2 and 3 inches, depending on how low I pull it on my head. And then you pretty much just continue knitting straight until, I don't know, maybe until about here. And you do maybe like 4 or 5 rounds of decreases in, I don't even know, like I wouldn't be able to explain it to you, which is probably good because you should buy the pattern if you want to knit this hat. But I thought it was really cool. It was really clean. And then you end with like a little ring of stitches that then you thread the yarn through to close up. And it kind of creates this little, these little bumps like that. I don't know how to call it, but I think it looks really cute on. I personally am not a fan of styles of beanies where there is a lot of space at the top and it gets very narrow and kind of floppy. I don't like that look, and you don't really get that with this one. You get a tiny bit of this part. It's probably only like that much though. So I think it looks really good. I don't know how much else there is to say about this. It knit up really fast, especially considering that I had to restart a few times as I was figuring out what yarn combo and needle size to use. But once I landed on the Lima and 4 together, that was a very strange pronunciation I did. Sorry, the far. Once I landed on those and the 4.5mm needles, it only took me like 4 or 5 days to do this. And it took me It took me a lot longer to do the weekend hat. Granted, I was also working on the scarf at the time, but the weekend hat took a long time with the 1x1 rib. This on the 4.5 millimeter needles, so fast. Because it's a fun pattern to do because it looks so cool. And I believe you could buy this pattern on its own, but if you have the book, she also provides instructions for how to use a lot of scraps and do multicolored striping within it, which also looks so fun. So yeah, I mean, if you're interested in a lot of Rose Knitwear's patterns and stitch techniques, I would definitely recommend the book because it gives you a lot of info and it's really cool. And I'm so excited to knit more from it. Even if it's just like knitting swatches just to see how they look, I think it'll be really cool. So yeah, I think I'm done with all my finished objects now. This is gonna be such a long video. Okay, moving into my works in progress. I only have 2, thank goodness. So I'll try to go through them quickly. I'll start with the bigger one. Make sure the stitches don't fall off my needle. But here it is. You can see this. The color's probably not even gonna come through properly. It's so beautiful in person and I cannot ever get it to be represented on camera, but this will be the step-by-step sweater handmade by Florence or Florence Miller. And I'm knitting this in Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo in the color 68 Shiroi, held with 1 strand of Knit Picks Aloft in the color silver. And I'm doing this as a knit along with one of my friends. One of my longtime friends who I used to dance with, she had started crocheting last year or 2023, I can't remember. But at the end of 2024, she made the jump to start trying knitting. And so I told her about this pattern. I gotta be careful with my needles here. I told her about this pattern because, I mean, it's a free pattern, first of all, and Florence has a whole video tutorial on YouTube for it, which is awesome. And we we sort of do like a yearly get together because she lives in Washington, DC, and I live in Austin. And so whenever we are home in Florida for the holidays, we always try to meet up. And so when we were together back in December and we were talking about it, I was like, you know what? Why don't we do a knit along? Like, I don't have any definitive sweater plans. I wanted to do something with my one friend IRL who knits. And so, yeah, so we're doing that together, which is fun. She is using Drops Nepal in a really gorgeous purple color. Maybe I can put a picture up to show you in case you guys are interested. So I think it'll be really cool. For mine, I'm doing a size C, which should give me a nice fit. I can't remember off the top of my head how many inches it would be. It is, or I don't remember the positive ease, but when I test knit the step-by-step cardigan for Florence, I also did the size C, and I think it's sort of similar grading, and I really like the fit of that sweater. So I was like, yep, we're gonna go with C. Since it is a pretty simple raglan, I did want to do something fun with the yarn. And so I was looking and debating a lot, and I was interested maybe in doing tweed, but then I was like, you know what? So many people do such beautiful sweaters with Noro. I have never used it yet. And I was like, you know what? Let's splurge on the Noro. Let's do it for this, because I feel like this simple design will really allow it to shine. And I'm so happy with it. It's, the lighting in here is kind of bad right now, but it's like a really interesting gray with almost like a green undertone. But, you know, like Noro is known for, it's got all of these really beautiful little colorful nibs or whatever the little things are called. And I mean, I love, some of my favorite ones are like the, where there's the dark blue or then the pink. Those are my favorite. And I've been going back and forth on what to hold with the Noro because I believe it's a 17, either 17 or 16 stitch gauge for the sweater, and you use 5.5 millimeter needles. So I knew only holding the Silk Garden Sock Solo by itself would not get me there. And I did confirm it's 16 stitches. And I had bought the Noro in person, so I was able to see it there, but I was having a hard time picking what mohair basically to hold it with. And so I ended up going with the silver, because I thought that if I got a white, it would probably overpower all the little colorful bits. I felt like it would wash it out, and I didn't want to lean too much into sort of like the green undertone of it. And so I figured this sort of like medium colored gray, and it looks very shiny on camera as well. I figured this would be sort of the best bet, and I'm really happy with how it's working together. You can see the silk core of the mohair in some of the stitches. I don't know if it's even coming through on camera, but I don't mind it at all, considering how just how colorful it is anyway. And yeah, what else about this? Okay, so the biggest thing that I've done different from the pattern is that I did not start with the collar or the neckline. In the pattern, Florence gives you instructions for how to do a funnel neck or how to do a folded over crew neck style. And I don't know what I want to do yet. So I was like, we're just gonna skip that part. We're gonna go straight into the body. And yeah, so now we're there. Before we get there, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over with this. After you do the collar, you also have the option to add short rows if you want, or if you are, you know, an absolute beginner and haven't done short rows yet, there's the option to just start knitting the raglan right away and not worry about the short row shaping. I opted to go for the short rows since I've done that before and I wanted the fit that short rows provide. And so you do the short rows while starting the raglan increases, and this has a 2-stitch raglan. I really like it. Like I was saying with the mountains and seas, this is a sort of a perfect wideness of raglan for me. And then yeah, it's pretty standard. I've joined under the arms, as you can see. I've got probably 2 to 3 inches even. And I basically stopped here because I finished the first full ball of Noro. So now I'm at the point of deciding what I want to do for the collar. I tend to prefer doing the collar and or sleeves before knitting the whole body, just because I like being able to see how it's going to look up here and how that is going to affect the fit of the body. But now I don't know what to do. I've been looking so much on Ravelry and Instagram to see what other people have done, and I just am having such a hard time deciding. Like I said, my friend Bryn is doing a funnel neck, which I think will look really nice. I'm sort of leaning towards that, but also I'm slightly worried it would be too itchy on my neck. Holding it it feels okay. Holding it against my neck is okay right now. I would just be worried that if it goes very high up, it would eventually get itchy. It also feels very warm, which is good. But yeah, I don't know. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, feel free to comment them. I'm so open to any suggestions. I asked my boyfriend and he's like, I don't know. So if you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them. Yeah, honestly, I want to keep working on it so much that I might even just start doing the sleeves to avoid having to make a decision about the collar. And at some point soon too, I'll probably, like FaceTime or something with my friends so that we can discuss how it's going. But we've been texting each other a lot about it. I believe she's kind of on the raglan part right now as well, since she started with the neck. But yeah, this is a step-by-step sweater. I think that's kind of it to say for now. It's knitting up so quickly on the 5.5 millimeter needles though. It's so nice. Okay, and so my last work in progress, which is very different from the step-by-step sweater, is a little Sophie scarf that I'm doing for my mom. So when she saw me doing the scarf number 4 for my aunt, she was like, oh, you know what, that's a really cute little design, like a little scarf. And I was like, you know what, I will make you one. I really like the scarf number 4 pattern. I also am kind of tired of making it because I have done it 3 times now. One was kind of like a trial test with 1 skein of DK weight yarn, which did not work. If you're going to use DK, you need 2 skeins of it. Second, I knit for another friend's birthday and I gifted that to her back in October. And then having just done the one in December/January for my aunt, I was like, I don't want to do that again. And I have the pattern for a Sophie shawl, and I have knit that before for a family friend. So I'm familiar with that. And so I actually played around a lot with trying to do like a hybrid of this with with an I-cord edge, combining the rib and garter pattern from scarf number 4. And I don't know. I wasn't feeling it. I was like, you know what? We're just going to do Sophie scarf, simple garter. You can see I've got a few different stitch markers in here. When I started out, I had only cast on 4 stitches. So for a 2-stitch I-cord on either side here. For the Sophie shawl, it's a 3-stitch I-cord. I'm not entirely sure what it is for the scarf. The scarf number 4 has 2 sort of edge stitches on each side. It uses a different technique than an I-cord, but it has 2 stitches on either side. And so I figured I would do that for this one as well. And so up until this first pink stitch marker, I was increasing every 4th round, which again, not having the actual scarf pattern, I don't know how frequently you're supposed to increase. In the shawl version, you increase every 6 rounds. For scarf number 4, you increase every 4 rounds. Sorry if this is getting confusing. But so for this one, I figured I would kind of follow the scarf number 4 increase rate more. So I was doing every 4 rounds, but I didn't want it to get too wide too quickly because I think I actually want it to be sort of longer and narrow and not really have as much of a point like the scarf number 4 has. And so after this point, I did switch to increasing every 6 rounds. And so I've been doing that now. I was trying to use a stitch marker to help me keep track of the 6 rounds, because for some reason, keeping track of 4 isn't as big of a deal, but then keeping track of 6, something about it just makes it easier to forget which row I'm on. But then I just got tired of moving this, so I gave up. But now I'm actually considering keeping it at this width and knitting straight, and just doing that for, you know, however long, and then starting to decrease again so it's not as wide. So yeah, that's my current plan. I didn't talk about needles or yarn or anything. This is Knit Picks, I think it's called Alpaca Cloud. Let me see. I've got the little band in the middle of the ball, but I can't see what it is. But okay, yes, it is Alpaca Cloud Fingering. So it's 100% alpaca. I got just a really nice sort of neutral cream color, and the color is called Sophia. But I think it's a really nice cream, and I don't know if you can see on camera, but I can see IRL. It's got all the nice little alpaca fuzzies, and holding it up against my neck feels nice. I am using 3mm needles, which feels so small. For the scarf number 4, I used 3.5, and I tried the 3.5 on this first, and I felt like the I-cord stitches looked a little messy. Even right here, I don't know what happened, but it looks a little messy somehow. But yeah, I figured I'm just gonna do 3mm to keep it a little cleaner, and I'm pretty much just gonna knit until I use about half of this. That's my goal, and then I'll start decreasing again. The scarf number 4, I think originally was written using a cashmere yarn, and I have now made it twice with the Cascade 220 Superwash wool. And following the pattern, I'm pretty sure that I had gotten stitch gauge, but it felt slightly short, even after washing and trying to stretch it, where I think if the person washes it again and stretches it, I think it's okay. And you can wrap it around and tie it without it feeling suffocating. But I just really wanted to make sure that this was long enough. So that's why I was like, you know what, we're just gonna go based off of weight instead of trying to follow any specific number of rows. And otherwise, I think that's kind of it to talk about for this. My mom will be visiting Austin in February, so I've got about 3 weeks or so to work on this, which I think I can do, especially if I don't continue to make it wider and I'm just knitting flat for a while. I think it'll be good, because then I don't have to worry about keeping track of increases or anything. And I'm just gonna go based off of measurements. Like wherever I decide to stop increasing, I'll probably just put another stitch marker in, so I know that, oh, okay, I knit, 2 inches of increasing every 4 rounds, and then 5 or 6 inches of increasing every 6, something like that. But yeah, I think that's it. Otherwise, thank you all so much for listening. I'm sorry that this was a very long episode all over the place. Yeah, I want to get more consistent with my uploading and filming. I feel like I say that every time, but it's one of my 2025 goals for this year is to be more consistent. So I hope to see you in the next one. Again, thank you all so much. Hope the beginning of the year has been going good for you so far, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.